welcome you to Christ Point Oasis. And today we're going to be having a discussion about all the things that are going on in our world. We see a lot of turmoil, a lot of devastating things have occurred, and it seems like rage is prevalent nationwide as a result of some of the things that have occurred. Um, Not so much because of one incident, but because of several things that seem to be happening in our world. You have individuals who are doing so because they're looking for acceptance and looking to be valued as humans for human justice. And we're trying to figure out how. How do we arrive at that? Because we believe that that's the overall goal. We believe that we're one humanity. Today, I have several individuals that I want to introduce to you, and you'll hear their voices. The first is my wife that you've met several times, Jacqueline. And I'm just going to give you a little ethnic background as well on each one of them so that you'll see the diversity we have. She is a Hispanic female, Puerto Rican and Dominican, and comes from a more urban background. So she's going to have an urban perspective. We have Danielle Shaughnessy, Danny, and she's from Shawnee, Oklahoma, white female. And she was born in a very conservative Christian home and in a city that was about 73%. Right now, it's about 73% Caucasian, about 14% Native American, and about 4.7% African American. I'm actually from that same city. I think during the time I was there, we were about 3.8% of the population. So it was largely Caucasian. We have Riley Turner, who's with us, and Riley is a white male person. He's a history professor from the Alabama area, probably about an hour from Birmingham. And he can tell you a lot about the history of that particular area, and he has a really unique story. Not only do we have him, but we have Nick Cannon. Nick is from Jupiter, Florida, and he's responsible for the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. I'm not sure exactly. Somehow, I think he worked with that particular organization with all of our campuses in Brevard County at Eastern Florida State College. He is about 26 years old. Is that right? I think you're about 26 years old. And so therefore we have a young perspective, we have a white perspective, black perspective. Y'all know who I am. And so let's start talking. We'll start on this note. Yesterday, I received a call from Taylor as my wife and I were actually on our way to look at some where a place had been burned down because of the rioting here in the Tampa area. In fact, I got photos of that. And Taylor, I just wanted to get you to share with them what was going on in your mind that caused you to pick up the telephone and give me a call.
So as I've just followed the story and followed the just the stuff that's been happening, I've really felt the need to as a white man to just kind of keep my ear to the ground and listen to people's stories, how they're perceiving things, how they're understanding things, how and particularly persons of color, particularly Black Americans. And so and you were one of the first people that I thought to call. I knew that you lived in Tampa, and so I know there's pretty severe riots going on there. And so I'm one, out of concern for your safety and the safety of your wife and your family, and, but also knowing that you love the Lord and knowing that you have a history in education and educating in diversity in particular. I wanted to learn. I wanted to hear your perspective in particular as to how you view this whole situation and what even moving forward would look like.
Yeah. Would you say that your reaction is pretty much a normal reaction? Of people of your background, who you are, who you represent?
So it's interesting. So we, I don't know. I think I think the Lord has had me on. I mean, it's just teaching me a lot of things. I mean, it started. I mean, growing up in Florida is pretty diverse. But I have two African American brothers. They're adopted probably 10 years ago now. Actually, yeah, probably 10 years ago now. Um, and so that's a new perspective. I have a Asian American brother that's more or less been adopted in our family from 6 years ago. And then I have essentially grown up in my Christian faith in InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, which is an organization that highly emphasizes multi-ethnicity and the importance of people's cultures and the way that God designed them, and will also ultimately redeem them. And so, I think the ways that and even then, like even with all those things, like I still I'm still just like hesitant to like again like press in and to learn and to listen uh and so yeah I'm not quite sure. I hope it is the general. I think yeah I think listening um and like having these kind of redemptive relationships with people that don't look like us and are from a
Okay.
culture that's like ours
Okay.
is an important step moving forward.
Well, Jackie was in the car with me, and I'm just kind of curious, as he communicated, and he actually prayed with us before we ended the conversation. Asked me what could he pray for, and that impressed me. Jackie, I was just curious, everything that's going on, and even if you have this call, what's going through your mind?
I mean, like, I think a lot, I know a lot is going through my mind. And, I think about how we find ourselves in a place that we found ourselves before. Coming up, I was born in Manhattan. I was raised in Newark, and I lived in Rochester, New York prior to coming to Florida. And I've always had a diverse community around me. And so I kind of grew to understand what some of the challenges were within that community. And so it's unfortunate that this is a story that I've heard before. Now we're reacting to it, we're responding to it, and I hope that something comes of it. I think I was communicating with you the other day that although I would like to be optimistic, it's hard not to be pessimistic because you kind of heard it before, seen it before, experienced it before. And so I kind of struggle to find my voice because I'm at conflict. I'm in a deep conflict about how to feel about this because we want to understand what it is to come to the table, but we've been at this table. So where's the conversation going to be where it's different? And I understand that, wanting to come from a godly principle, that we want to come together in peace and know that that God is the one that ultimately is leading us and should lead us.
Let me do this. There's something that you said in relation to you grew up in a diverse environment. I heard Taylor also mention the diversity that he grew up in, but we have two people here that really came from an area that wasn't as diverse. You look at Danielle and also Riley. Both of them came from areas where, I'd say Danielle more so had a larger population of white people. So Danielle, as you just see all of this stuff that's going on, and growing up in that kind of environment, how does it hit you? How's it impact you?
Well, we had the advantage of being in a different time period where there was a certain push still towards something better. And there was a real strong push toward integration. And that's when I met you, probably when we were put on buses and brought down to Washington School for the first time, sitting next to people. I had a little boy in my third grade class in Jefferson School, and his name was Joe Nathan Stargell. You may know him. And Miss Vogler sat that young man behind a barrier in our room when he came into our room. And that was the first time inside my stomach that, you know, I got that anger, and I was only third grade. So for my whole life, I witnessed it. I had a grandfather that was very racist, and I was taught sort of a racist doctrine, not knowing it. It's just part of your life. It's just part of your living. And so you don't know any different until you know different. And then something happens when you are taught different, that there's a moment of real clarity that comes. And then even as a child, you can see the wrong. And so we had a real advantage in some ways, that there was a real push still when we were young towards teaching each other about it. Even on a, you know, there could be good things or bad things about busing, but for me, it was a real good thing. And
When did that moment of clarity come for you? Just out of curiosity.
well, probably very young, and it's probably more of a racist story than you would want to tell right now. But there have been very many of them, and it took a point when I was 18 years old to turn to my grandfather, who'd just been rude to one of my friends. And I waited till my friend left. My friend was very polite with him. And of course, it was the fried chicken and watermelon expressions that my grandpa was giving to my friend. What'd y'all eat? And I stood there just in disbelief that he would cross that line with me, my grandpa would. And so when my friend left, I had to say, Grandpa, one day you're gonna die. And when you die, so will that racism. It's not going on to my children. It will not be passed down to my children. So I think that sometimes being in the midst of something can be more of an inoculation.
Mhm.
And then also I felt enough white entitlement that I could be mad about it without feeling like anything was going to come back on me. So there were conditions of the environment I was raised in and the person I was born to be that affected those outcomes. I really can't say what would have happened in my life if I had never been bused. Would I
Okay.
be another racist white lady? Who knows?
Riley, just give a little bit of your background.
Well, I mean, I grew up, like you said, about an hour north of Birmingham, in an area where, if you look at Alabama today, and you look at the numbers. I grew up in Lawrence County. Lawrence County, if I remember correctly, was about 12% African American. I can't remember any Latino or Asian people at all in the county I grew up in. There were Native Americans, but they were leftovers from the Trail of Tears that escaped and came back and intermarried, but still retained some of their native folkways. And I have some of that in my family, but it was, watered down a lot. I started grade school in 1976 after having gone to a white kindergarten, or a Baptist kindergarten where everybody was white. So in 76, so integration was already well underway in the schools. And it's interesting that the first people I gravitated towards as far as being friends was little black boys, Reginald Golston and Michael Alexander, and we were always getting in trouble together. But I also grew up with, I mean, when I say friends, it was school friends. They didn't come over to the house. We didn't do, if I had a sleepover, they weren't coming. And it wasn't because I wanted them to, or, I'm sure if I'd asked, my parents probably would have said, okay. I have two, you were talking about those moments with Danny. I think of two moments. Well, one's sort of slipping my mind, but one moment where of clarity was when I was a little boy, probably about 6 or 7 years old. And I'm riding with my grandfather through the black part of town. And we would go that way to go to church sometimes. And Yeah, it had a name. You know what I'm talking about? Bottle Road community. You've been there.
I know exactly where I preached there.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah, we both preached in that church. But anyway, so I'm driving through there and I see Patrice Hubbard walking down the street. And Patrice was just gorgeous. And I said to my grandfather, and I knew there was something in me that knew, even though no one had ever said anything, that maybe I should ask if it was okay to like a black girl. And I said, would it be okay if I had a black girlfriend? And my grandpa said, yeah, that'd be just fine. Just if you do, you can't come to my house anymore. And he just said it in the most matter of fact and just, you know, a sweet way, but what was going on was ugly. And so from that point on, it was like, oh, there's something, you know, it's sort of set in my mind that there's got to be this separation, you know, because Grandpa knows what he's talking about, you know. He's an old man, you know. So that was a moment of, when I say clarity, a moment of clarity about the world in which I lived.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there was some other story, but I can't recall it right now. So, but
let me
anyway,
get you hold on. Okay, yeah, let me get you to hold on just for a second anyway, because, you know, the thing is, I think all of us, even though we come from different environments, I see, you know, Jackie comes from a very diverse environment. We see that Taylor mentioned some diversity that he grew up in. Like I said, Danielle and I, we share the same demographic and actually same time period, you know. In fact, anyway, there's a thought that went through my mind I'm not even going to go to. But anyway, the thing is today, when we get back to today, basically some individuals are being very quiet about this. You know, if you were to look, I call it avoidance. And instead of practicing avoidance, I think that we should be those who are engaging the conversation about what we ought to do. I think that we should be trying to bring about an awareness to what the issues are. Some people are in denial, I believe, that there are still problems that exist. And, you know, I'm just kind of curious what you think. In fact, you know, my wife said something as far as the violence is concerned. You know, she was saying something. What were you saying that you believe is still is yet to come, Jackie?
You think about where we are right now and how outraged we are, and how we're responding to it. That we haven't laid to rest George Floyd, and so it will be something to see what the response would be then. And so whether there'll be more of what is happening and will it be worse, will there be a quietness and understanding and kind of help us all kind of come together and bring about some conversations that'll bring change. It's hard to say, but I feel that it's going to be a moment where we need to watch for.
So let's address really what the issues are. And the reason is I was dialoguing to somebody. Actually, I invited them to come because I wanted a very different perspective to be communicated. This guy's is, you know, he's putting up all kinds of things to identify that, you know, he believes that it's not really about one man. Well, it's not about one man. It's really not about one man. I think we need to address really what the issues are. Most of you talked about historically some of the things that you experienced. Danielle talked about the historical situation that occurred, busing and her grandfather. But Taylor lives today. I mean, he's a young person, 26 years old. The question is a lot of people are, they're not aware that certain things still exist. And so, you know, especially those of you who are, let's say, Caucasian persuasion, are you aware it does exist, that there's a problem that exists? And then the question is, how do you articulate it so that other people are able to see it?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think it exists more obviously, and in some ways it's more twisted and integrated in subtle ways, whether it's through television or memes or whatever it is that children are having in front of their eyes all the time. I think we have to put in front of our children's eyes the push towards unity, the things that make us good. That is a goal, instead of all this other stuff, that it has to be a deliberate action now, because it is a deliberate action to be divisive. It is a deliberate action. Some of the things that come out of my mother's mouth or her typing now, this very day, you are not the direction that we should be going, or that we should be preaching. We should be preaching unity. We should be acting unity, and it requires you getting your hiney up off the couch and doing something with someone else. It's an effort, and not saying, oh, those people shouldn't be burning. I have never had my child murdered, but I promise you that if I did, you would be seeing a different me entirely. So to say that these people would set, there are children that I have seen go out with my child, my son, and I worry more about the black boy in the car with my son if they were doing reckless things as teenagers. They're grown now, thank God. But when they were teenagers, I was worried more about a black kid in the car with my son and my son's safety, because I knew that he would have different results if they got in trouble.
Yeah.
And that's now.
No, I'm listening to you, Danny, and I'm looking at you. And just to compare us side by side, we could be sisters, right? But we come from different backgrounds. So for me, although I came from a very diverse community, and we kind of took care of our own, and we didn't experience it with each other, what I did experience is a systemic breakdown of authority. So when it came to me, I understood what that hatred was based on the authority that was in our community. We were made to feel less than. I grew up around every ethnic background you could think of, but you'll excuse me, except Caucasians. So when I experienced that, it was in the form of authority. So for me, I see it as a breakdown, a systemic breakdown of authority, of education. So how do we get back to that? How do we get even to that? Have we? I was having this conversation with Irvin. It does start with education, but I mean, I make it a point. I remember when I was a kid, I wasn't taught history like that. When my children were growing up, they didn't learn that if it didn't come from me. Yeah, they skimmed through it and they let you know, it was Black History Month, so therefore we're going to learn a little bit about this. But really, the foundation of our country had little to do with that. Let me tell you about all this other stuff. And so now when I speak to parents that have children in the system, and by which I envy not, it's the same conversation. Yeah, we get a little bit more, but we don't have enough of that to make that student feel that they are part of the solution rather than itself. So for me, that's frustrating. That's frustrating, and that's where my conflict comes from, because my kid would come home, Mommy, I learned this, but then I had to open their eyes to their reality.
Yeah.
And so,
let's do this for a minute. Taylor has a 10:30 appointment, and so Taylor, I just want you to, make a statement that would allow you, and then we're going to continue on, but we're going to let you log out here in a minute because I want to respect your time. But just do you have anything to add in view of maybe the last thing that we were talking about?
I think it's just a really wonderful point. I think, I think a couple things, Jackie, kind of along what you were saying, just the idea of like, just differing relationships and being involved and associated with and coming in contact with and befriending people from various cultures and backgrounds and how that affected you and shaped you. And it's just interesting that the only people that you weren't around and involved with were white people, and who just happened to be the people in authority. And so, and how that creates like just a way about that you see people. But I also think it's well, so to say about that, like, I just think that's so important. Like, it's just kind of, Danny, what you were talking about of like the doing, being communicating, having relationships, being loving people and caring for that. And I think ultimately, like, I know you talked about multi-ethnic churches. Like, I think that's the way the church is supposed to be. Like, the more I've thought about it in the last couple of days, the more I think like, man, it seems like the church is supposed to be like the picture of what this country wants to look like.
Riley. No, keep going. I'm sorry.
So, yeah, I know you got a lot. So I'll let you guys talk about that at the end. But it's just, and I don't know quite even what that looks like. And so I'd love to continue to talk and listen to what you guys have to say about it. But yeah,
Riley.
But let me
I'm sorry.
make sure.
Riley, say this with me. Say this with me. We are the family of God, fulfilling the heavenly vision through genuine love and care. All right.
When was the last time we said that together?
It's been years. But
Been
Just
10
now.
years.
I just heard you right now.
Hey, Taylor,
Mhm.
I want to make sure I got that quote right. Did you say the church is supposed to be the picture of what America is supposed to look like, or was it the other way around? He's like, oh no, I just thought of it. I think that's what you said, wasn't it?
I think it was more so like, I think it's the church is supposed to be a picture of what America wants to look like.
Wants to look like, right. I like that.
Yeah. I'm gonna let you go. I know, Taylor, you have a 10:30 appointment, and so I want to really respect your time. But we appreciate you taking the time to be there or to actually give your input. And we want people of different ages to be able to see somebody that they can really relate to. All right. So thank you. Appreciate that.
That was my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
See you,
And good to meet everybody.
Bye, Taylor.
Yeah, I look forward to listen to the rest of the
Let's not let
story.
this be the last time we do something like this.
Yeah, please.
All right.
All right, see you guys.
Give me one for